What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Movie Theater Memories. This is the show where I relive some of my favorite experiences of going to the movies. And in this episode, if you can't tell by the shirt already, I'm going to be talking about 1978's Superman, the movie. And this is a movie that I'm not even sure that I saw in 1978. So let me explain. My mother used to work at a movie theater, and this was a second run movie theater. It was called Five Towns in Far Rockaway, New York. And we used to go there all the time. Sometimes that was our babysitter. Sometimes she just was treating us to a movie. She couldn't find, like I said, she couldn't find a sitter, so we would watch a movie. So I don't remember if this was one of those times or this was one of the weekends that I got to spend with my dad, and he took me. That part is fuzzy. What you do know is that the theater was practically empty. It was me, whoever brought me. Might have been my younger brother who's 5 years younger than me, so he probably wouldn't even remember this. And then maybe three other people in the whole theater. And we watched Superman. That's the first thing that stood out to me that I always remember is I got to watch it on a big screen and practically by myself, like it was my TV. And for a kid my age, that was an amazing thing. And so the reason why I say I'm not even sure if it was 1978, because again, that theater was a second run theater, and theater they would run movies from the prior year all the time. So it might have been 1979 when I saw it. And based on some of the events or one main event that I'm gonna tell you about, uh, leads me to believe that it was 79 and not 78. And the reason is because 79 is about where my memory gets a little more vivid than 78. And I know it's pretty close, but that's what it is. Now, before 78 or 79, I was a Superman fan. I was a kid. And what I used to do is I used to watch The Adventures of Superman, the TV show with George Reeve, every day. It was on after school and loved the show. And when I found out that there was a movie coming out, I was, hip about seeing this movie. So when I got to see it, I was excited going to the theater and sitting there watching it, watching everything that happens in that movie just felt magical. And revisiting it a couple weeks ago, it still felt magical. And I left there changed to some degree as far as my view on movies and on Superman. Um, as far as Superman himself goes, the reason or what changed about me was that again that whole magic aspect. Whereas when I watched it on TV, as much as I loved it, it was a show, and even at a young age, I could tell, I could easily spot the tricks that made him super, right? So, for instance, if there's a bunch of bad guys standing there and they're shooting at him, and bullets are supposedly bouncing off his chest, well, you can see that they're kind of drawn bullets, right, or drawn superimposed things bouncing off his chest. You can clearly see it when he goes to fly in that old show. He takes a few steps and he jumps. So the camera, he runs towards the camera. So by the time he gets close to the camera, all I'm pretending these are my legs. All you can see are his feet, and he jumps. So that leaves the frame, and then you hear the loud sound of him flying. You hear that, and then the next they cut to a shot of him in the air. He's doing this thing. So I loved the show even as a kid, but it was like, yeah, I don't know if he's really flying. It never made me feel like he was really flying. Let me phrase it that way. But watching Superman the movie, there's some wonky effects, right? Namely, him trying to outrun this train, it's supposed to be faster than a speedy bullet, stronger than a locomotive, but he runs a train in the movie. Um, and that looks terrible. But the rest of it actually looks pretty good, especially considering that the movie was made in 78 or it came out in 78. Especially him lifting off the ground to fly or just landing. because those are things that also didn't happen on the TV show. The landing, he just jumped in from out of frame. Well, here you can see him clearly in the air, right, and land, or raise up off the ground and just start flying. And for an 8-year-old kid, 7 to 8-year-old kid, that was mesmerizing. And the other things kick in. The storytelling um, was just really patient storytelling, and you know we didn't have much time with Ma and Pa Kent in the movie, but we felt their presence. Um, and of course, he did the super thing. He was the super baby when they found him, and he lifts up the truck because Pa Kent was trying to change the tire, and he goes to the Fortress of Solitude, and we get that whole thing. Him interacting with his dad, his actual dad from Krypton, and then next shot, finally, after all this time, like 45 minutes into the movie, we finally see him standing there in the suit, and it's a reveal, and it's like, oh my God, he's Superman. That's kind of that's what it was like when I was 7, 8 years old. I was like, oh man, now he's Superman. And then he comes flying towards the camera. There's no cutaways or anything. He just flies towards the camera right from where he was standing. And then next cut, we're in Metropolis, right? And we get to meet Lex Luthor and all and his lackeys. We get to meet everybody at the Daily Planet, including Lois Lane, played by Margot Kidder. And yeah, again, all of this was just like it was coming to life, and it also helped that it was in vivid color. I'm a person, now as an adult, I can watch a black and white movie no problem anytime. Love a lot of black and white movies. As a kid, though, it's not that way when you're used to seeing color. Even though I grew up in the 70s where you had color TVs and black and white TVs, any chance you get, you were watching the color TV, right? That was the treat. Adventures of Superman was the first few seasons were in black and white, and then the last couple of seasons were in color. So, but even in the color, it was washed out. I can't remember if it was Technicolor or if it was something else, but it never looked natural color in that show. Here, it looked natural. It looked like Superman had come down from planet Krypton and dropped in our world. And then everyone's reactions to him, I talked about this when I did my Superman stream. Everyone's reactions to him also made it feel that way. When he lifts up the truck that I mentioned a minute ago, Paul Kent, his jaw drops open and he's got these wide eyes, and then he turns to Ma Kent and he's like, no, we can't tell anybody about this. When he's first time he saves Lois, she's falling off the building, and he leaps up to grab her, and he says, you know, don't worry, I've got you. And she says, you've got me. And everybody that's on the ground that watched them was like, oh, wow. And at that age, I needed that. They were my surrogates because I felt that. That's how I felt watching this movie. And so by the end of the movie, I guess it's a spoiler, but by the end of the movie, of course, Superman saves the day. And the way he saves it is just the dumbest thing ever, right? Now, he flies around the earth backwards to make it rotate backwards and turn back time, and everything rebuilds itself. And it's dumb when you think about it for a minute, right? But at 8, that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. Because the way they showed it, you see him fly out to space. He's angry. He's like, "Oh," and he gets out to space, and you just see his path, right? He's going the opposite way of the Earth, and then he gets faster and faster and faster and faster, and then the Earth itself starts to rotate, stops, and rotates in the other direction. At that moment, it was the most amazing thing. And then to set things right, he stops and reverses field and goes the other way and sets the earth back spinning the right way. And of course we get, arrest Lex Luthor and all that kind of thing. And the movie's over. And for an 8-year old, a lot of times, and myself included, when the movie's over, right? At best, you just want to watch it again. So, and I got to experience the adult side of this when I had kids. Because I watched or they watched the same movies over and over and over and over and over and over and over. In those days, I didn't have the option to watch it again. Not right away, not without going back to the theater. There was no, there was well, there was a such thing as VHS, but my family didn't have it. We couldn't afford that. It would be 3, 4 more years before we had a VCR, and buying a VHS tape was out of the question, even if you did have a VCR, because they were costing $80 and up. Um, there weren't that many, if any, video rental stores around yet. Matter of fact, I don't think there were any around yet. So the next time I would be able to see it, I would either have to convince my mother to let me go to the movies again and see it, or I would have to wait for it to show up on TV, which could have been as much as 5 years. I just don't know. So if I'm 8, you know, and you telling me I might have to wait till I'm 13 to watch Superman again, you're insane. I can't wait that long. But that's what it was. It turns out we didn't have to wait that long to see Superman on TV again, but it was longer than it would be now, right? Like the new Superman, it's in theaters as I'm making this video. It's been in the theaters a couple weeks. It'll probably only be in a couple more, and then it'll be on demand, and then it'll be on physical and all sorts of platforms. So within 7 months, 6, 7 months, I will less than that, I will have Superman, the new Superman, on these shelves somewhere. Um, then not the case. So what could I do? I wanted to be engaged with Superman somehow. So I went home, and it wasn't the same night. It was, I want to say a few nights later, right? Maybe the next weekend even. And my mom had some friends over, and this was this was a set of friends that I don't think they had any kids. Most of the time when my mom had friends over, they had kids, so I would have to play with the kids that came over to the house, and I would entertain them while our parents were in another room doing whatever they were doing. But in this case, I don't think these friends had any kids, so I was kind of by myself. And I only at that time, like I said, my younger brother, he was 3. My sister and my youngest brother had yet to be born, so it was just 2 of us. And I'm 8. I'm too big. I don't want to play with a 3-year-old all the time. Besides that, he's 3. He going to bed. So what I do, you get a legal pad. One of those yellow legal pads where you got to flip the pages like this. I get a legal pad and a pencil or a pen. I can't remember which, of course, but I get a pencil and pen. And from memory, 'cause remember, I had been thinking about this movie from the time I left the theater. So from memory, I decided I was going to try to rewrite the script of the movie from memory. And I wrote pages and pages and pages and pages. All these years later, I can't tell you how accurate I was. I can't tell you how much of the movie I actually got down on that page. But in the moment, I remember it feeling like I did it. It felt like I got every word, every scene of this movie. I didn't have stage directions because I was 8, but it felt like I did it. And I would go back to it and read it sometimes, and that connected me to the movie. I wasn't into comic books yet. I was into superheroes, but only on TV. I watched, like I said, the New Adventures of Superman. I watched Batman, the Adam West series. I watched the Linda Carter Wonder Woman series. I watched the Incredible Hulk. Actually wasn't out yet, but I would watch that a couple years later. Uh, the Justice League, or as we called it then, Super Friends. I watched that. Um, any cartoon that had a superhero, and I watched it. But none of those were the movie, right? Those were cartoons and short TV shows. The movie was where it was at. So I wanted to engage with that movie, and that's what got me to do it. Was I would try to rewrite that entire script, and I would go back and from time to time I would read that. I would just sit there and read it like it was a real book that someone else had written for a long time. For that kept me close to the movie in some ways. And then a couple years later, they put it on TV, and it was a different cut. So things were happening that I didn't see, and that blew my mind further. But I always have the theatrical experience. I'll always cling to that, and it was always a phenomenal experience. I wish that I could find that legal pad, or I had that legal pad, just to see how close I got. Because again, there's no way on God's green earth that I got everything right. But in that moment, I felt like it. That's what kept me connected to the movie. It also helped me understand that there was a lot that went into making a movie, even though I was only writing the words. Right, it helped me understand that there was a lot to go into making the movie, because the other thing that puzzled me, the other thing that that kept me awake was how was he flying? How was he flying? Now I look at it when I revisit the movie, you can see a little bit better. You can see now, in a lot of instances where he's superimposed onto a screen, right? They didn't have green screen back then. They just kind of filmed him floating along and superimposed the picture. A lot of wires and cables and all that sorts of thing. You didn't see wires and cables. So all of those things made Superman the movie special. Helped get me into movies, and I will always, always love Superman the movie. That's all I have for you guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. If you've been here before, thanks for hanging out with me again. Bye.